You're listening to Best Forevers, a podcast for kindred spirits, a podcast that encourages you to love more on your friends and to further consider the issues that plague friendships. I'm Alysa Lucas, and I grew up in a house where many lessons learned from my mom and dad were about being polite. Politeness was like a religion, if you will. That quote-unquote killing them with kindness was more ideal than reacting in a different way that might escalate a disagreement by engaging with someone else or completely neglecting a situation. I mean, how many quotes exist about being kind? And you know what? I'm on board with all these quotes that I found via Google, including kindness is a gift everyone can afford to give. In a world where you can be anything, be kind. One kind word can change someone's entire day. Snaps to that, that's for sure. Kindness is free, sprinkle that stuff everywhere. Yes, like confetti. Don't wait for people to be friendly. Show them how. I like that. So you can be friendly, and then you're likely to get it in return. The world is filled with nice people. If you can't find one, be one. And then the final quote is, be kind whenever possible. It is always possible. But do we truly know the difference between being friendly and being friends? Being friendly is an approach to others that is welcoming and positive, according to a Psychology Today article from 2012. Being friendly doesn't mean that we like the person or what they've done, and it's not necessarily about agreement or approval. Instead, it's about warmth, showing patience and care, and a level of respect for other people. In the moment, it's being kind, polite, and collegial to those around us, including strangers, coworkers, family members, romantic partners, and even our friends. Friendliness does not equal friendship. In truth, most relationships are friendly acquaintances, which I got direct quote from Psychology Today. And I think that is really important to consider, is that just because someone is friendly to you doesn't mean that you will then be friends with them. So what are friends? I think we've talked about it a lot on this podcast, but they're the people that we choose to be our people. It's about sharing and doing things together, having someone to go to when there are things to celebrate and things to mourn. It's about having fun and laughing and enjoying the time together. It's about knowing that the person is there for you even when they're not physically there with you. But although my heart swells for friendship, I also know that we can lose some of our friendliness in our closest relationships. Friends can be the ones we love the most and the ones that we hurt the most. So although friendliness and friendship is different, the two can go together. So if you think about it this way, not being friendly in a friendship may cause that friendship to change, and it might increase uncertainty in those friendships. And we talked about that in last week's episode, uncertainty in friendships. So sometimes we say things we don't mean. Sometimes we're in a bad mood and we take it out on the people that we care about the most. And so one of the things that we have to be aware of in our long-term relationships, or the relationships that we create, is that it is critical to be mindful of the times in which the friendliness might disappear, right? That you always want to like your friend or your partner or your family member in that sense that you can provide respect and show respect. But sometimes, we also know how to push the people we love. We know how to push their buttons. And sometimes we can do that to make a point because we're mad, all sorts of reasons. But it's really important to think that of all the people I'd want to hurt, would it be this person? I'm guessing not. And many of you might be going, I don't want to hurt anyone. However, there might be people that we've hurt and we didn't know it. We've hurt without intention, and that we've hurt with intention. And so obviously not being intentional about hurt is a better place to be, but it can still happen. So I've been thinking a lot about the question about the difference between friendliness and friendship for a while. As I've started talking about topics on the podcast, the idea that making friends is hard, that there are a lot of things that can get in the way of friendship. The workplace can be difficult without that. And so I was really thinking about this, and one of the topics that made me start thinking about this the most was the episode called Friend Zone, which is when I talked about unrequited love. As a reminder, unrequited love includes two players, the would-be lover and the rejecter. And it reflects the experience of loving someone who doesn't love you back. So the idea is like we get crushed by our crushes, so to speak. And it's a situation that really isn't good for anyone, but is likely to be an all-around bad situation for the rejecter because there's no way to sort of win in that situation. Being overly friendly can be problematic. It gives people hope. And so it can be hurtful and disappointing to the would-be lover. So again, it's just not good for anyone. But I received a listener letter after the episode, and I'd like to share it with you now. I've been watching a lot of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. The show is outstanding. So I changed the name of the listener in the story to the main character played by Andy Samberg, Jake. So this is a letter from Jake. There was this girl that I met and became close friends with my freshman year of undergrad. I was fully aware that she was in a happy long-distance relationship with her high school boyfriend who's going to a different school in another city. I did not have feelings for her when we first met. Rather, a close friendship developed. Within a year of that close friendship becoming a genuine and special one, the romantic feelings finally surfaced, and I did talk to her about it. I think both of us could have handled that talk better. I'm sure in hindsight, 2020, most people would say I could have handled that better, right? But fair. As going back to letter, as there were no actions both of us needed to take at the time. She was in love with her boyfriend, and both of us were deeply appreciative of the friendship that had developed. The friendship grew even deeper when we transitioned to University Park, which is where Penn State University is located. And we did more things together, like studying together, even though we had completely different majors, leading a discussion group, and grocery shopping. At the least, my social life centered around her. I had friends encourage me to branch out and make new connections, but I got too comfortable knowing I had this stable friendship as a major aspect of my life. Eventually, I started to feel like I gave more in the friendship than she did. As described in the podcast, she was over-benefited in the friendship. Slowly, I was starting to feel like if there was a situation where I needed her, I felt that she would not be there. It was not because I couldn't trust her, but rather I thought she did not see me in the same best friend status as I did. I guess at the time I was looking for her to match my effort in the friendship, which consisted of, quote, when you needed me, I dropped everything just for you, end quote. The feeling of, quote, I will never be the best friend, unquote, was the reason why I ended the friendship. However, the idea of her over-benefiting and me feeling underappreciated and ending the friendship for that reason may have been deeper. I swallowed the bitter pill that me and her will never be together, and for almost all of undergrad, I settled for just being the very, very, very good friend. I ended the friendship 4 years ago, and for the past 3, I couldn't look at pictures from the time because of the heartache it brought back. But recently, I've come to realize that at some point, she was an important person in my life, and the friendship I developed with her was deep and meaningful. I've toyed with the idea of contacting her to explain all of this and get closure. I worry that I may abandon closure and search for a reunion. Ultimately, I learned, and still trying to learn this lesson, from this experience of being friend-zoned. I can't give too much of myself to the point where I lose my sense of self and expect the other party to match what I have given, because what I've given may be impossible for them to match. You know what, Jake, thank you for sharing this, because I think it's important in a lot of ways. One, that you said there were some romantic feelings that developed, but it sounded like it was a deep friendship that even at that level, the investment was not to the same degree for both parties. So you were more invested than she was. And I think that you're right that we need to feel like we are appreciated in our most important friendships and in relationships for that matter. And that ending the friendship might have been better off in the sense that it's not something that continues to gnaw at you. And as you said in the last bit that, you thought about whether or not you should explain all of this to her, and then that you could get some closure, which a lot of people, that's what we're looking for, right? We want to know why relationships have ended. We want people to understand our side of things. And I think that here, that you're right, that maybe going back and explaining everything might call for a reunion, which might bring all these feelings up again and might lead you down a path where you're under-benefited. And I think one of the things is that we can learn from Jake is that they had a friendship. It has the markers for talking and enjoyment and sharing activities, support, no judgment, and then equality, except that equality seemed to be the issue that led to the relationship ending, as well as he said that he could trust her, which I would also add as a very important marker of friendship. And I think there's so much more that we would call friendship. And what I see in this letter is friendship, that I think that when people have a one-sided relationship and it might be unrequited love, that you might see that behaviors that might be considered friendly within a friendship might be a signal that, oh, you're telling me there's a chance. So it might have started out as a friendship for both of them, but as things change, it becomes one-sided. There might be problems with the relationships. In other cases of unrequited love, the would-be lover may confuse that friendliness of the rejecter as signs of interest and moving the friendship into a romantic context, and may fall back to the friendship, but again, it's a cycle. The friendliness can be taken wrong, and then you're like, oh, I have the feelings, and then you're back to the friendship, and then you misread the friendliness, and so on and so forth. It can be like a merry-go-round that you can't get off. In fact, research from the Nonverbal Communication Reader couple and colleagues looked at friendliness and flirting and found that men were more likely than women to interpret friendliness as flirting, seeing the interaction as more seductive, which could impact the entire view of that person in that interaction. So if we are in a situation where there is a would-be lover and a rejecter, friendliness can be viewed maybe not in the way that it's intended by the person. And so that can be a problem with friendliness. Like, we have to consider that friendliness is different from friendship because there's a lot of problems that can come from it. I mean, okay, friendships have problems too. We talk about it a lot. But I think that we really want to get at how we can see the difference between the two. Just because someone is nice to us does not mean that they like us. Just because someone is nice to us does not mean that they are flirting. Just because someone is nice to us doesn't mean there's going to be a romantic relationship. And just because someone is nice does not mean that they approve or accept you. And so that is sort of the line that we've come to is, can we see the difference between the two? And in terms of the research, they also found that this was more likely to happen where men saw women as more of flirting when they were being friendly, that they saw this even more so when the woman initiated the conversation versus if a man initiated the conversation. So again, this may apply to the would-be lover seeing friendly behavior as more than it is, and this is one instance when that friendliness, we got to know the line. But also, we got to consider the rejecter may try to be friendly so not to hurt someone's feelings. In the end, the rejecter may say, I like you as a friend, or people use the word like friend zone. And to me, any confusion over being friendly and being friends may complicate the experience of unrequited love. So additionally, the episode on workplace cliques has me thinking about the difference between friendliness and friendship as well. In the workplace, the expectation is ideally that there would be collegiality among all of colleagues, coworkers, etc. Anyone who has to come into contact with each other, that we would hope that all employees enact a level of friendliness through their verbal and nonverbal communication. But again, being nice to colleagues doesn't mean that you're friends outside of the workplace. But as we talked about in the Workplace Cliques episode, is that the friends are within the clique and those who feel left out are not considered to be friends. And that can be problematic. If those in the cliques were more mindful of their communication with others, they could, if they wanted, to decrease perceptions of cliques by being kind to everyone in the office. I think you can see where there are lines, right? That you're like, this person is enjoyable to work with and I appreciate that. But I know that they're good friends with this other person, or that they separate friendship and from work, that we start to get to know people, even in that context, to maybe try to read that line. And so one of the things is, though, that it can be very difficult to make friends. And so when we have a new job or we get into the working force, into our career, that we might be looking to add new friends or to find someone to connect with. And workplace is going to be one of the main places to do it. And I think that is great, and that you can see that friendliness can lead into friendship, but that isn't necessary to happen. And so one of the things to consider if you're coming into that situation is that there might be people who aren't looking for friendships. And so going in assuming that everything can be a friendship might be problematic. But on the other side of it, going in and being like, I'm never going to have any friends or I can't make any connections is equally as problematic or wrong, right? That we just have to have that balance of knowing that sometimes things are going to be friendly and sometimes things are going to be friendship. Finally, considering a situation when someone responded to my call for collegiality among a group of people, it was clear to me that there was a distinction. So this last experience of mine also got me thinking about the difference between friendliness and friendship. In response to my call for kindness among a group of people, I was told that, quote, not everyone is going to be friends, Alysa, end quote. And folks, I gotta say, my initial thought was, am I getting friendsplained? Is someone trying to explain to me what friendship is or the situation? And I'm not saying I know everything about friendship. I think I've been really clear that I love friendship and I have for a very long time and that I try to live it, breathe it. My work is related to it. This podcast is related to it. I'm not always a good friend. I'm not a perfect friend. I try to be a mindful friend, and I try to share with other people the importance of friendship. So I feel like in that situation, they might have meant something different, like, well, as you might know, or as you understand and that sort of thing. But I kind of felt like they thought that I didn't see it, that because I study and love on friendship, that they see it as that I think everyone should be friends. And that's not the case. There are lots of people I don't want to be friends with. Sorry. Hashtag not sorry. So, I do have an optimistic and open heart when it comes to friendship, and I love friendship, but I certainly know not everyone's going to be friends. Not everyone can be friends, not everyone's going to want to be friends, and so much more. But the absence of a relationship or friendship does not mean that there should be an absence of respect or kindness towards other. So for me in that situation, I don't think the answer to a problem with collegiality is to be like, well, you can't make people be friends. Well, no, you can't. It's not like you're going to put, oh gosh, I love on the internet those pictures when parents put their kids in their get-along t-shirts. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. And I might have used that as an example before because that's what I think of when people say you can't make people be friends. And sometimes, though, we are pushed into friendships. I mean, think about it. When you're a kid and you can't go past your block and cross the street, who are your friends? Your siblings, the people right by you. It's sort of a forced friendship. Or when you go to elementary school, these are the people in your classes. That could lead to, these are my only options. But yeah, we're not making people wear get-along t-shirts or we're going to be friend t-shirts. And I wouldn't expect that. But it is more about, well, what can we do so that people can be more mindful, supportive, and patient and caring of other people as people they work with, that they spend time with, that they might have to deal with for whatever situation. Why can't we focus on that not everything's going to be a relationship, and even though I've described some problems with friendliness, that it doesn't seem like it should be erased or eliminated, that it can still exist. So it's again about being welcoming and to help people to feel more comfortable. And in general, if we communicate friendliness, we're likely to get friendliness back. So isn't there a quote like, what you put out is what you give, or what you give is what you get, those kinds of things. I think I said that quote wrong. It's what you give is what you get. That's correct. Okay. Thanks for staying with me, folks. I appreciate your patience and friendliness as I try to work out a quote in my head live in front of the mic. But one of the things is if you do get friendliness back from people, that definitely means we have to talk about the benefits. So on the All Women's Talk webpage, there was an article talking about some of the benefits of friendliness. And specifically, they talked about 7. And the first one was that through friendliness, you can make an impact on someone's life. So think about it. Has there been a situation where you felt down, something wasn't going right? Have you ever cried in public or been in an accident or, fell or whatever the case is, and someone comes up to you and then they're like, "Are you okay? Is there anything I can do to help you?" In that moment, that kindness, that warmth, that friendliness made a difference, right? And maybe interaction with someone who's continuously friendly with you, it has an impact on how you see people, how you see yourself, how you see the world. It might be an impact. And I just saw a video, and it's in the Best Forevers Facebook group that you can join if you like to see more about friendship. I post tips and articles, and people are posting memes and videos and all sorts of stuff. So if you'd like to do more of a deep dive into friendship besides just listening to my lovely voice, then you can join the Facebook group. But the video that I saw, it was from CBS News, and there was a kid who was outside, and he was sort of just by himself, and it was cold, and he was just kind of playing around by himself. And then a police officer drove by, and he stopped, and he asked the kid if he wanted to play catch. And they threw around a football for, I think, the person who posted the video, which I assume is a caregiver of some sort, was saying that the police officer took the time and that her son is not likely to forget this anytime soon. So it's not like, hey, we're going to be best friends with this police officer between a teenager and a grown adult. But what you see is someone going, hey, that person is by themselves. It's cold. Let me see if I can't make a difference here. And I don't think that he threw on the football specifically so that they could take a video and show it. But sometimes especially when there's so many difficulties in this world, it is nice. And people say, I always love to see these videos of kindness. And it's like, why do we have to treat them like they're unicorns? They're like once in a lifetime experience. Look at this person being kind. And it's like, no. Let's do this more. Like, let's live friendliness because it can just make for a better situation for us if we're friendly to other people and if people are friendly to us. I think about people who are sitting alone and someone starts a conversation with him. There's so many things that we can do that can make, it might seem small, but it can make a huge impact on someone's life. And thinking about rejection and loneliness and all these other things that can have a horrible impact on our health, that even 20 minutes of throwing around the football might have changed the kid's outlook completely on that day. And I love that video, and I've watched it numerous times now. And I'll also put it in show notes so that you can check it out. The next benefit is that we can receive unexpected benefits. So it's not that we are friendly so that we can be like, give me all of the resources, give me all of the rewards and all of the winnings and where's my crown and give me my attention. No, that it's just when you're friendly, sometimes then you are paid back with a benefit. So if you are nice to someone or you are friendly or you do something kind or warm or patient, that people repay us in some way. And it might not be what we expected, but it can be something that can motivate us perhaps to be kinder or continue to be kind. And of course, the first example I think of is when people find someone's wallet or purse and they return it and they get a reward. So it's like, in that situation, people might be like, well, that's more the right thing, whereas necessarily there isn't right or wrong in terms of being kind. I think we all would like kindness, but sometimes we just want to be left alone. I mean, fair. Sometimes it's just like, I'm just minding my business. But, so there might be a level of like what is good and bad in that situation, but that's something I think of, that there is something that comes back to you because of your kindness. The next thing is, and I know you're going to say Alysa, but you just said that friendliness doesn't equal friendship. So I just want to preface that as I say what the next benefit is that you can make new friends. And so I'm not saying that you will, it's that you could, right? That friendliness is a way to make people feel comfortable and at ease and people tend to like people who are friendly, and so they might be drawn to people who are friendly. And if you're friendly back, it might start a relationship, and that could be great. And it might turn into the best friendship that you've ever had, or the friendship that you need now, whatever the case is. But again, just because someone is friendly does not mean that it might lead to a friendship. It's that it could. Like, I think the chances are higher with the friendliness and that positivity. I love this next one. This says, it starts a love chain. And I'm like, is that like those emails that you get, and if you don't send it to like 15 people, you have bad luck for the rest of your life plus 1,000 years, and all of your ancestors will have bad luck for the rest of their life because you didn't forward this email? If that's the case, no thank you. But what they were talking about on the webpage was that a love chain is just the idea that it's contagious. So smiling at someone is contagious, right? That it reminds me of going into like the drive-through at a Starbucks, or the place that I tend to frequent here in Michigan, which is Big B Coffee Shop. And it's going up, and you've ordered your chai tea latte or your mocha latte sugar drink, whatever you get, whatever, black coffee. And you get up there and you're like, I got my Big B card to get points so I get a free drink next time. And I got my money and I'm ready to go. And here's my tip. And then they're like, the person in front of you bought your drink for you. And how many of you have been like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, how kind is that? And the person might not have any idea what you ordered. And a lot of times what you find is that then you might buy the drink for the person behind you, and so on and so forth. And I think that, we have seen articles or stories and things like that where there has been a long chain, like 100 people in a row bought drinks for each other. And it's like, let's spread some more of that kindness, I mean, gosh. I know that, for example, I was having a pretty hectic day at work on one Wednesday, and someone who I work with knew it was kind of a crazy day. They knew my drink order. In the middle of the day, they just knocked on the door. I was like, I thought you might like this. And I was like, oh my goodness. And when something like that happens, again, it goes back to the first one, is it can make an impact on someone's life. Even if it's in that moment, it might not be like, I remember 40 years ago when that person bought me a coffee. But in that day, it can completely change around your day. But in terms of a love chain, it might get you thinking about what you can do for other people. It doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, they bought me a drink and so now I have to. It might just put into your mind, it might just like plant a seed to think about how you can be a little bit more giving or friendly with other people. And so you might think about, I know that person has a really important meeting coming up. So I'm going to message them and be like, afterwards, what if I, go to Taco Bell, because Taco Bell is my love language, or insert any food that you like, and say, how about if I grab some of this and we get together? And so again, that can show friendliness within a friendship, but also, if you smile at someone in the hallway or on a campus, they're likely to smile back, and then they might start smiling to other people. And then we just have a love friendship chain. And so it is forwarding. You just won't have bad luck for the rest of your life. The next benefit is that you can make a good first impression by being friendly. And I think that is, impressions are, they form fairly quickly. From what I recall from research, that a physical first impression is made in less than a minute, and that, an impression through conversation, it occurs in the first 4 minutes. And so when I find that source, I'll update you with that, folks, so that I'm not just like pulling stuff out of the air. But I think that is thinking like how fast people can make impressions of other people. And another thing to think about is what's called anchoring. And that is when we make an impression and it's like an anchor going down on a boat and it's stuck there, right? Like the boat doesn't move because the anchor's down at the bottom of the body of water. And so one of the things is that an anchored impression means whatever people's first impression of you is likely to impact how they see you for a very long time. So think of it this way. Have you ever met someone and been like, wow, that person is mean and they're a jerk, and I don't like them. And so then the next time you see them, you're like, oh, there's that mean person. Oh, here comes that jerk. Oh, I have to work with that super mean person on this project. And then let's say you're on that group project or you're working on something for work with them, and then you're like, oh, they're not so much a jerk. And you're like, why did it take me 2 years to figure it out? It's because that bad first impression really stuck with you like an anchor, right? And so maybe that person was having a bad day, etc. Same thing can happen with a good first impression. That can anchor and it can sort of set up how people see you. Now, if you are like the person that I assumed, well, it was a hypothetical scenario. The person in that scenario who assumed this person was mean, they could be like, well, I really like them. And then they work together and they're like, actually, that first impression was wrong. But the important thing to know is to start out relationships, to start out collegiality, to start out anything, that being friendly is the way to do it. And then finally, they have this idea of leaving open communication so that people can have more open communication and so they feel like they can talk to you. And if it's a coworker situation, then they feel like they might be able to knock on your door and say, hey, I have a question, versus if they're like, ooh, they don't seem like they're someone who wants to be distracted, or they don't seem very friendly, then maybe they'll go find someone else who they think is friendlier. But also I just think that if someone needed help, that someone who communicates friendliness or appears to be friendly, again, they might be able to put people at ease and be more comfortable, and they might be more called on to be in those types of situations. And so that is... shit. I miscounted. There were 7 benefits. And the 7th one is establishes mutual respect. And so if I'm friendly and you respect me because of my ability to be collegial with you and vice versa, then that's going to really help just having that sort of that friendship where we can just know that it helps you feel better, helps them feel better, and that you can just make things happen, right? In the workplace, if you're roommates, oh my gosh, all the stories I hear from students about roommate situations, I'm like, if there's ever a relationship that might need some friendliness, that is one of them. And so if you got roommate stories, send those in. I feel like I could have a very special 9-part episode of Best Forevers where we break down roommate scary stories. And if you remember Mitch and Zach being on the podcast in the episode, Freezing a Gucci, where they talked about their roommate, then you will know that friendliness might definitely be needed. So yeah, there are 7 of those benefits. So there's lots of good that can come from being friendly. And if it leads to friendships, that's great. So if you're like, this doesn't sound like me, and it doesn't sound like some of the things I would do, I think there is an idea that friendliness can be a character trait, so that maybe people are more inclined to be friendly than other people. Maybe that's related to being extroverted. Maybe it's related to being to optimism. I don't know what those connections are, but I might wager an educated guess that could be related to personality. But also as a communication person, I think there can be some level of skill involved. At the very least, if you're aware of what friendliness is and aware of your behaviors, what you may be doing or not doing, how you might say things to people and what you say to them, that you might be better off at being able to improve or change your behavior in terms of friendliness. For example, you might practice listening to others as a way to communicate more warmth and patience and showing interest. But it seems like as a skill, it might be necessary for the workplace. As I mentioned in living situations, those roommates. How about neighbors, right? You got a neighbor who, my neighbor in New York, I swear he was throwing, a rave every night that I could hold out my phone and Shazam the song that he was listening to. And it's like, The friendliness, okay, maybe he doesn't care if he bothers me or not, but the ability of having some level of friendliness among each other, some mutual respect and that sort of thing, that I can go to him and be like, hey man, it's a little loud. And, can you turn it a little bit down? Or, I don't mind the music as long as, it's not a weeknight or something like that. It's going back to those benefits that allows open communication. And it just seems like a skill that can be helpful out on the street, wherever you are. And the good news is, besides the benefits that I mentioned previously, it's likely to help decrease a lot of your stress. So this idea of being irritated, frustrated, angry, stressed, that sort of thing, that maybe friendliness can decrease some of those feelings. But let's be clear. Friendly is not about being a fake friend, right? Like Regina George from Mean Girls, when she's like, oh my God, I love your bracelet. Where did you get it? And then the girl's like, oh, it's my mom's. Oh, vintage, love it. And then she turns around and she's like, that's the ugliest bracelet I've ever seen. And so that kind of friendliness is super fake and is not going to really help anyone. It doesn't help Regina's reputation. It might be, the girl might have had a boost of positivity at that time, but later when she hears perhaps that Regina was talking about her behind her back, that could be problematic. So we do need to start thinking about how we can help people, and maybe even starting with children, to distinguish among people we can trust and those who we cannot trust. If that's something that you were taught or that you learned somewhere, that's amazing. A lot of times I think it might be through parental lessons, and then we get the stranger danger situation. But what happens when someone's being nice to us? Can we trust that they would be a good friend? So again, that's where the difference between friendliness and friendship comes in, is whether or not we can trust them, whether or not they're going to listen to us, whether or not they're going to keep our confidences private, right? Those are the things that we need to be able to determine who a person is. So again, let's be clear. Friendly is not about being nice just to get what you want, and that would kind of lead into a one-sided relationship like Jake was talking about in the listener letter. It's not about being the one-sided. It's not about being demanding. It's not about being overly friendly, like, hello, everyone. I just remember my dad when someone's like overly friendly and it seems super posed or like theater. I'm not saying theater people, but it's just like you're handing me a drink somewhere and it's like just like over the top. You go, too happy. And so sometimes over-friendly might be jarring to people, might be alarming, it might be viewed as fake. So even people who are nice all the time might get a reputation that it's fake. And so that's something to think about. Friendly is not about crossing boundaries. In fact, knowing boundaries may help friendliness. And what I mean by this is, again, being friendly doesn't mean you have to agree, approve, or like someone. It just means being, again, not fake, where it's over the top or you're trying to get something out of it or you're talking about people behind their back. It's just going, let's have a working relationship. Let's be kind to each other. Let's be patient. Let's have some level of welcoming and warmth, because we're both human beings trying to make it in this world. And sometimes the world is rough. Have you seen Twitter? So I've been thinking about friendliness versus friendship a lot lately, and I just wanted to share my thoughts with you. But I'm also wondering what you think. Is being friendly confusing to friendships? Is friendliness for suckers? Or is friendliness a skill we need to have in life to be happier and more successful? So you tell me. Oh, my purple shirt friends. Email me at bestforeverspod@gmail.com. Share with me on social media, or check out the surveys on the Best Forevers webpage, because I want to hear from you what you think about the difference between friendliness and friendship. Are there things that I'm missing here? Are there further issues with friendliness? Are there further issues between distinguishing between friendliness and friendship? How do you distinguish between? And then, of course, I want to hear all the roommate stories. We have to do an episode on that. It's a must. So until next time, I challenge you to think about the difference between friendliness and friendship, because without friendliness, who would we be? Thanks for listening to Best Forevers. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and of course, share with a friend. Please be sure to follow Best Forevers on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Best Forevers Pod, and I'm at Dr. Alysa Lucas on Twitter. You can always find the podcast webpage for more information at bestforeverspod.com and share your stories of friendship by emailing me at bestforeverspod@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support the movement to love on our friends more, check out the podcast on patreon.com/bestforeverspod. Now, friends, check out this recommended podcast that you must get in your ear holes immediately.
Do you love true crime, history, and mysterious happenings? Every week on The Cult of Domesticity, a guest and I discuss a different historical happening, a true crime story, or whatever strikes our fancy. Join me, Courtney, every Thursday to hear some fascinating tales from some fascinating people, wherever you listen to podcasts.